Right, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, RSC, and indeed, I'm delighted to be here. I have a confession. It's my first time ever in Belfast, so I find it sort of fairly unusual and very welcoming at the same time. We arrived last night, and everyone was incredibly helpful to us and to making us welcome in Belfast. So I'm delighted to be here today with you. As Andrew said, that we work with many institutions across the UK, and indeed we do work with Northern Ireland. Let me sort out the technology. And I'd like to share sort of with you some of our thoughts about the way ahead in terms of what a future technical college might look like and the sort of challenges and opportunities that we are facing. The Minister talked about sort of some of the developments, and he left you with a question about how to embrace and to use the technologies to maximize the learning experience and to maximize the potential for colleges to interact with the business community. And I'd like to sort of start with a few questions or a few thoughts perhaps, and then move on to the main topic of my presentation. I'd like you to think about sort of, we were talking with my colleague Sarah, who prepared the presentation for me, because I've sort of been running around from one place to the other, so I'll blame her up front for some of the slides. We talked about sort of learning to make the connection, and I think that's sort of the connection in more than one way. Connections with the students, connections with business and industry, connections within the community. So think about the connection bit, but learning to win. The element of gaming, as it were, and part and parcel of the pedagogical exercise, part and parcel of the learning process itself. And the chair of the board and the minister talked about engineering and science and technology as an important constituent in developing the capability of Northern Ireland. I'd like to ask you to think about the inquiry-based learning and the way in which you could embrace and embed some of these activities as part and parcel, again, of the learning journey for learners within the institution. So we all need to learn how to play the game better and to win. So that leads us to a couple of things. Sort of a new concept of learning is the multidimensional learning and the open learning. We have the open innovation, which is around the collaborative innovation and the opportunity for exchanging knowledge and exchanging sort of know-how between different individuals, different communities of practice. But I'd like to get you to think about sort of the open learning concept, because we can't just think about just Northern Ireland and Belfast. It has to be in the international context. It has to be within the regional and sectoral context as well. So these are some of the thoughts I'd like you to think about before I sort of tell you a bit more about the foundation and what it does. Andrew talked about my background a little bit. I did work for a very small organization called IBM back in the 90s, and during that period I had the opportunity to lead on across the IBM functions in the world on some of the research and development activities, one of which was the mobile phone of today, where we actually looked at some of the applications of telephony, email, photography, and your office capability. And at that time, all my IBM sort of colleagues said, well, that actually is not going to fly. These sort of things are terrible, and they're not going to work, basically. That was 1995. I stood up at a conference in Le Hulp in Belgium, where our training center was at IBM, and we talked about the sort of the development of this future mobile technology. Admittedly, it was the size of a brick at the time, but it contained phenomenal amount of stuff that we actually today are using. So, and the design wasn't actually just about making the office better or looking at the entertainment. None of those sort of applications we thought about, but we thought about sort of some of the technologies, and we're not sure really what might happen. So the not sure of what might happen need to be embraced in the mindset of many of the teachers today to enable you to sort of push the boundaries of innovation. So that was one of the things that I encountered in my career. Another application, very briefly, is I was responsible for the design of the voice recognition system at IBM. It was one of the key inventions at IBM, in fact. And we talked about sort of how we're going to get rid of the secretary, because we're going to use basically that voice recognition system. And in fact, what